My Succubus and Me by Mr. Joshua the Storyteller. A lovely morning with a beautiful sunrise in a small fantasy world was just lighting up the dew on the edges of the grass. The smaller woodland life was waking up. The buzz of insects flying about, squirrels jumping along the branches, a tremendous scream erupting from the foliage. "Stop, would ya?" That's right. Just another typical morning in a small fantasy world. "I will tear your arms off when I catch you." The foliage rumbled and then exploded as a young boy burst through it. He had messy black hair in natural curls and pale skin. His eyes were wide open and his thumping heart practically jumped from him like a song. He had a boyish charm and proceeded to jump up into a tree near him. No sooner had his legs slipped up into the leaves of the tree than two very big men crashed through the bushes. They paused in the center of the glade and looked around. "Where did he go?" "I'm not sure." "We were just behind him." The two men were bead red, with heavy breaths. They had simple peasant clothing. With big meaty arms and thick fingers, they wiped sweat from their brows. "You must be hiding," the smaller of the two men said to the other in a whisper. They made little nods to one another and began to creep around the clearing. Not much of a sound was made, aside from the footsteps on lush dew-covered grass. The boy, still hiding in the tree, looked from between the leaves to see the men. They flashed in and out from behind the leaves. The boy leaned forward to see better, but his curiosity betrayed him. The small branch he leaned on broke with a snap. He fumbled for a branch, but it was too late. He fell through the branches and landed with a thump. The two men whirled around on their heels, glaring at the boy with eyes looking ready to pop from their heads. "You little scoundrel!" the taller of the two men barked, dashing after the boy. The other man grew a sinister-looking smile and stomped after his friend. In turn, the boy had jumped to his feet and stood back-pressed to the tree he fell from. His heartbeat drummed up in his head, making his pounding headache follow a throbbing rhythm. The men surrounded the boy, their faces a mix of exhaustion and violent excitement. The two men lunged forward, arms outstretched with hands looking for soft skin. The boy ducked from the first hand headed for his neck, while the second hand swept right past his left ear. The second man, the shorter of the two, tried to reach in, but arms simply tangled together as they both tried to grab the boy. Jumping over and through arms, the boy dashed off again into the woods. "No, you don't!" the men yelled in eerie unison. The three took through the woods like only those who had done it before could. The boy, however, had the edge. Smaller and well-versed in the ways of protruding rocks and roots, his feet skipped and jumped, skidding around trees and slowly gaining a little ground from the men. Skilled as a runner as he was, the boy was tired and needed an escape. That escape appeared as a cave on his left. The boy turned to run towards it, his feet getting closer and closer to the cave mouth, when he heard a loud crunching sound, the familiar sound of something colliding with a tree. The boy looked back to see one of the men, for the most part hidden by the tree. The man immediately erupted in a maelstrom of pain, clutching at some part of his body the boy couldn't see. The other man had stopped to help his friend, so the boy turned and stepped into the cave, hoping the men would not see him. The cave was distinctly cooler than the forest outside. The wet drips of slowly growing stalactites and stalagmites echoed off in the distance. The light, what there was, only came from the cave mouth, making a poor excuse of room light. The boy did not want to stop, so he stumbled through the cave as his eyes adjusted to the low light. The boy's footsteps clattered against the stone floor, slowly winding downwards. As he walked on, afraid to move too fast in case he would stumble or fall, the light happened to change from a dim yellow to a dim blue. The rocks themselves seemed to glow with it, this light. The boy bent down and picked up a small stone to examine it. The stone looked completely normal, but it glowed with a faint hue of blue that seemed to emanate from its very core. The thump, thump, thump of feet cut into the boy's wonder over the stone. The boy dropped the stone and continued down the hallway, a little faster than he dared. Voices drifted down the passage as the men walked down it. One of the voices sounded muffled, however, and the boy was afraid someone else had joined them, maybe someone who knew their way in the cave. The boy was not one to swear, though he was sure he'd heard all of them by now. So instead, he simply thought of some meaningless combination of letters, and was determined to make it his own little curse. Nearly stopping at the relative near impossibility of trying to say the letters S, C, Q, and K in one word, the boy began to mutter. Of course I would stumble into a cave full of magic rocks. Of course I would try to make up a word full of conflicting letters. The boy gave a sigh. Living in a world full of magic will never stop being so annoying. The boy's footsteps slowed to a stop, however, as the little pathway opened into a large cavern. The ceiling was distant, with a faint blue light. The boy gazed around, and wondered how far down he had gone for the cave not to hit the ground. Maybe it was in a mountain or a hill. Where is he? The boy froze.
I don't know. He must be farther in.
It was that new voice again. The boy looked around for something to hide behind. He decided on a large rock column where a stalactite and stalagmite must have met a long time ago. He dashed behind the column and listened as the footsteps grew closer. He tried to slow his heartbeat and breathe out as quietly as one could, while the men walked into the room. It was just those two men again. One of the two men, the taller of the two, was now clutching his nose with his hands.
How far down does this place go?
The boy exhaled with a sigh of relief, his newfound fear melting off of him, leaving only the hard as steel core. He put the story together in his mind. The man clutching his nose must have hit a tree while they were running. That would explain the loud noise. The boy would have laughed were he anywhere else. Instead, he simply swallowed a bit of violent understanding. That boy is gonna pay for this. Those two were looking for blood now, and little was going to stop them. The boy looked around for something, anything to help him. He contemplated throwing a rock as a distraction, but decided against it, because there were two of them. The men walked a little deeper into the cave, forcing the boy farther around the column in order to stay hidden. If they walk a bit farther, the boy thought, I might be able to get out behind them. The boy's feet hit something as he edged around the column. There had actually been a small pile of somethings, one falling off the top of the pile and making a clatter. The boy went to swear again, but realized he still didn't have one. What was that?
It must be the boy.
His blood seemed to stand still as the boy panicked.
Where did it come from?
I'm not sure. But he must be in here. Look over there. The men's footsteps grew louder as they stomped across the cave. The boy hurriedly snatched up the fallen stone as if to take vengeance on it. What he did do was stare at it blindly. The stone was not a stone at all. It was in fact a human femur.